So thank you, Abigail, and good morning to everyone who is here with us today, who is watching us live or at a later time. This is the third lecture of a series of lectures on the books and the work of Joanna de Angelis. But I have failed in the past to tell you who is Joanna de Angelis. So today, I would like to, if you have never heard of Joanna de Angelis and you're wondering why are we doing so many lectures on this person, so she is the spiritual mentor of one of the biggest Brazilian mediums, Divaldo Pereira Franco. And she has a number of books, some of them already translated to English, and so I brought you here a few of the titles that are currently available. And this is a place where you can find all of them. Leal Publisher, here is the website for you. And as we go through the slides today, you may not see a reference of a book, and the reason why is because that particular book has not yet been translated. But the primary book that we will be using today is the one that you see in the middle. It's called Plenitude, which is available in English, and I really highly recommend for everyone to read. Now, like I mentioned before, this is the third of a series of lectures. And so the first two lectures we have cover Joanna's approach to death, and in that we have seek to solidify the certainty around the issue of immortality. We have redefined life, death, and losses. We have trying to prepare ourselves to both to live and to die. The last one, the second one, we seek to normalize and integrate illness and aging as integral part of our lives. And today, we'll hopefully acquire some resources to better cope with loss and recognize the importance of detachment as a step, a necessary step, not only to live better and more fully, but also to better cope with this fact, which is that all of us in this room or wherever you are will one day experience physical death. And how do we handle that? So if you feel that the content of our presentation today is meaningful to you and you have not watched the other two lectures, they are available online and can be definitely found. So let's start with detachment for today, and then we're gonna go into loss. So when we think about, a lot of times people ask me, how do I better prepare to die, right? And one of the tools for better preparation of dying, other than contemplating and thinking about immortality and what that is and the consequences of that, is to practice detachment. And detachment is life, because every time we are deeply attached to the material, we are not fully living to our potentiality, the present moment, because attachment to the material narrows our experience here in the present moment. So I'll give you an example. All the labels that we put on ourselves, who am I? I am a physical therapist. Who am I? I am a female, for example. All those are attachments to material labels. If you identify yourself to that, if that becomes your essential identity, you're narrowing your experience in the present moment, because you are so much more than that. We have been living many lives and have been many different professions, have spoken many different languages, have lived in many different countries. So our best identity is of immortal beings. So again, every time we identify and we attach to the material reality, we narrow our experience of the present moment. Now, I brought this quote that I really like a lot. It says, detachment is not about refusing to feel or not caring or turning away from those you love. Detachment is profoundly honest, grounded firmly in the truth of what it is. So it's really not about turning away or actually trying to escape connection and love. On the contrary, is immersing yourself into it, but keeping touch with what the truth is, the truth of who we are. And I think spiritualists want to do a really great job in reminding us of what life is truly about and who we are in essence. So what is the challenge that we face when it comes to detachment? And again, just a reminder that this is not professional translation, is the best that I could pull out, so bear with me. I will read and I'll try to translate in my own words so that if something is a little awkward, hopefully it can become clear. But she will say, while immersed in the cellular mortar, the spirit submits to the imposition of sensory phenomena that predominates the evolutionary behavior. Simply stated, once we are in the physical body, the spirit has to submit itself to what is available physically. The experience of the spirit relates to what this physical body allows it to feel and to express. So let me put a very concrete example. When we think about the spirit sees with its entire being. But in the physical body, vision is limited to the eyes, to the sensory organ that we call eyes. So it's narrowed to that organ. Metaphysical perceptions are tenuous. So in other words, our ability to connect with anything that is extra material is tenuous, requiring reflection and constant mental adaptation. Our body is very coarse, it's very dense. So it's very difficult for us to connect, to sense, to experience the spiritual reality that really defines us, because there's a great barrier that is the physical body between us and everything that is transcendental, like the spiritual realm that is right here together with us. So it takes a mental exercise, it takes reflection, it takes concentration, it takes the development of our senses, such as intuition, for instance. The soul is challenged to better experience them, these perceptions, due to the subtlety of the waves to which they express. So the connections, an intuition, your mentor, your guardian angel whispering to you something. It's very subtle. It's very not dense. I'm trying to find a word that would yeah, ethereal, right? So very subtle. So it's hard again for us unless we take a little moment, we quiet our minds, you know, we breathe, we center ourselves. It's difficult for us to capture those emanations. So this is our reality once we are incarnated, once we are in this physical body. And so she will continue. It is then natural, therefore, as a result of these circumstances, the incarnation circumstances, that the inevitable attachments born from the instinct of conservation to everything that represents sensation or form. So not only we are, let's put it this way, far away from being able to feel what is not material, but we are in such a dense vehicle, instrument. We are so attached to it. And the instinct of conservation is so strong that everything facilitates the attachment and the identification with the material. Some of them, the attachments, serve as psychological stimulus, making confrontations and existential difficulties less distressing, less unpleasant. So it makes sense. We need the attachment. Life, I think we can all agree with this, it's not easy. It's not a piece of cake. The moments in our lives that we struggle so much, that is so arduous, so painful, so distressing. But that instinct, that attachment actually generates within us a drive, a desire to live, to overcome. So in that sense, the attachment is positive and it's necessary. And it will give us sometimes, have you ever wondered about human resilience? I mean, we hear stories, you hear stories about what people go through and you wonder, how are they alive? How are they coping? We all have problems, but there are many human beings in this planet who are not living, they are surviving each day. They don't have the minimal for a life with dignity. There are people who live under wars. You go to bed, you don't know if you're going to wake up alive on the next day. And yet, people are living. And they are living because they are attached to this life, and it has to be this way, so that they can stay and undergo whatever, life is set for them to have. So, but sometimes the attachment, other times, however, become two private prisons that hinder the necessary spiritual flights in search of freedom. These impulses are momentarily diminished, the impulses to fly and to seek freedom. So attachment, if on one hand, helps us to stay and to fight, on the other hand, it hinders our evolution, because we are, for instance, attached to people. How so? You say, my son, my daughter, my mother, my father. The possessive nature of our relationships speak about how attached we still are to these family constellation, let's put it this way, right? And that attachment will a lot of times hinder the quality and affect the quality of our relating and our loved ones' freedom and our own freedom. So it's essential, she says, that we rethink affections. Loved ones to whom we are attached will have to move forward, will eventually pass, and not always will remain retained in the powerful bonds as they are known in the present moment. So what do we know in Spiritism is that we are here together in a family, and for the present moment, that is the family constellation that we need in order to attend to our relational needs and our individual progress. However, each one of us is an individuality, is a spirit with its own journey, its own needs, coming and going. And these spirits who are next to us today in some shape or form in our closest family, they may not be with us in the next lifetime. They might have the need to move on to a very different experience. They might come back in the same position, they might come back in the same family or not. And so this is a perspective that we have to keep in mind. And it's an exercise for us because we are so attached to what it is, to the physical organization that we experience in the present moment. So it takes, like she said before, the exercise of the mind to bring the perspective of immortality into our beings, not only cognitively, but to think and to reflect so much about it and to pull this awareness into our daily lives with such a strength that it starts to become a feeling. It's the way we experience, and we're going to have a small exercise shortly. So I also like this quote. It's not mine. Detachment in a relationship is probably the most real type of love. And why is that? Why is that? Think about it for a second. Detachment in a relationship is probably the most real type of love. Because if you truly, truly love someone, you wish for that person what? Nothing but happiness. And happiness may be next to you, or maybe not. Sometimes people need to go and follow their own path. And if you truly, truly love, right, then it calls for detachment. In love, there's freedom, never possession. Love can never hinder. Love is meant to free, is meant to assist the other person to grow and to find his or her own happiness. Easier said than done, no? But thinking and reflecting is the first step for anything. We have to start creating the reality in our minds so that it can become a reality in our hearts and in our daily living. So Joanna will say that detachment must be an essential proposal for achieving inner harmony, because when you are not in this place, then so much suffering and distress and anxiety and anguish are born from trying to keep, trying to retain what cannot be kept or retained. So she continues by reminding us that human beings are immortal. Humans inhabit clothes of weak protection like our physical bodies. Although they are resistant to many incidents, they become infected with the tip of any significant instrument when contaminated by harmful microorganisms. So we have talked about this in the previous 2 talks in this subject, but it's always important to remember. We are seated here, so probably most of us is feeling fairly good today, healthy for most part. Sometimes we feel strong, sometimes we feel invincible. Sometimes we think that illnesses is something that happens at our neighbor's house, but not in my life, not for a long time anyway. And all it takes is touching something that is infected for your life to be threatened. Because that little infection on your finger can become a systemic infection, and you can end up in a hospital bed fairly quickly. That's how vulnerable our physical bodies are, and that is again and again the importance of keeping in mind the frail condition of the physical body, and keep that in mind to help us to be fully present in each and every moment with the awareness of what is that we are doing here. What is the meaning of being here today? Learn to free yourself from things and appearances. Even those you love can stay with you to the edge of the grave From there, each one goes their own way. I like this sentence. You know, it just kind of brings it home, right? So remember this, we are walking together, but there is a limit. The limit is the grave. Right there, we are going to say, I'll see you soon. I'll see you soon, right? And we have to have, it will be helpful if we have lived lives where the meaning of our life is within us. And our relationships, of course, bring meaning to our lives, but the meaning of our life cannot cling entirely on anyone else. But we have to have our own purpose separated from the people that we love. A lot of times parents put the entire purpose of their lives in their children, forgetting that they too are immortal spirits on a very unique journey and will be with you for a period of time, and then you launch them back into life so that they can pursue their own path and find their own meaning. So here, when it comes to detachment, sometimes I like small practices. So think of someone who you love and who you feel like attached in a positive way, because of course in love there is connection, right? And in connection there is a level of attachment that is good, necessary. It makes us care and really want the best for somebody else. But when we look at that person, and you can look at that person in your mind, you can say to the person, I see you. I see your immortality. You are one. You're not me. We're separated. We're individualities. I honor our love and connection, so that stays forever. That never ends. If love and connection are real, that never goes. Right? So I honor, and I will honor every day of my life. But I also honor your journey. My love calls for your happiness and the fulfillment of your mission. So these are just little sentences, and you can do your own, right? What would you say? As we, you can go and say, you're my child or my parent or my spouse, but you can look at that person and say, ultimately, we are brothers and sisters under God. And that is what every single relationship is trying to develop, that sense of brotherhood. That no matter what, no matter where life takes us, no matter what our individual journeys will be, that sense of brotherhood, that connection, that love, that identification, you are now part of my spiritual family. There is no specific roles other than you are a spirit who is now part of my spiritual family, the real family. You have been chosen. I have welcomed you into my spiritual family, and this family just keeps growing. And so we bring this awareness into our hearts so that the idea of loss starts to fade away. Because there is no such a thing when there is love between people. And so that takes us to loss, right? And let's see what Joanna says about loss. She talks about the pain of loss, and she will say, no pain is compared to the one that arises after the passing of a loved one. It steals the joy of the ones who stay behind in the body, deeply evidencing existing feelings of love and leaving vigorous marks in the most emotional field. So make no mistake, The same way that being the physical body creates the attachments, the necessary attachments to material life, it's very difficult for us when the body dies, because we are so used to that physical presence next to us. It leaves a void, a hole, right? Once in a while, so my father passed away like 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, and I have his picture on my desk, and I look at his picture, and I sometimes I think, it's unbelievable that you're no longer here. It's a wild thought. And that foreign feeling, it's a foreign feeling. It's that I look, it's like, it's surreal. It's unbelievable, right? So, and that's okay. That's okay, because he was physically in my life. I knew I could, every time I could go to Brazil, I could go visit him, and now I can't anymore, right? So this feeling is natural, and she is validating the pain of physical loss in our stage of evolution. And then when it comes to the mourning process, she'll say, it's only fair to cry the absence of the loved one. It's fair to silently wonder about the situation of the departed. Valuable resources to deal with that are the exteriorization of pain, the ability to cry, to revisit memories, and to pray. So a lot of times the spiritist message has been used against the expression of these feelings, which is a horrible thing, because it is so valuable to our mental health to express the sadness that is absolutely part of the process, right? So she again comes to validate those ways in which we mourn and should mourn, because, you know, when I was putting this together, I one day did a posting on my Instagram where I said something like, you know, love and loss or love and pain are different sides of the equation called life. So if you want to be fully alive in this life, you have to love. And love and pain are somewhat intertwined, right? But that is to be alive. And so it came from like reflecting on these two passages of Joanna. Then there is something called premature loss, when you lose someone at a very young age. And she says, when that passes through a home, it becomes detested for snatching a young loved one who was healthy or sick, or for cruelly snatching a loved one to the tragedy of an accident or a crime. Even so, that is the great liberator that proposes the unveiling of happy horizons to the traveler who, having recovered from previous deaths, gets ready to welcome the affections that will later join the departed. So this is a very challenging concept for us. It's hard to struggle with, it's a struggle to deal with death when it comes at the natural time. It's an even greater struggle when it seems to be a premature loss. And we'll hear people saying things such, my goodness, this person so young, with so much potential, with so much life ahead of him or her, such a bright future. In chapter 5 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, the spirits are going to ask us, what future are you talking about? What exactly are you referring to? Are you seriously comparing the future of the soul on the earth to the future of the soul in the spiritual realm? Are you seriously comparing happiness on this planet with the happiness outside of the physical body? In other words, they challenge our conception. Because for us, attached as we are, this is a good thing. But from the spiritual perspective, if someone leaves early, although yet a greater trial for the ones who stay behind, that person came, accomplished what he or she had to do in this incarnation, and is free to go home. Is free to go home. So Joanna will truly, truly challenge us, because I'll go back to it's one slide ahead, because she's going to talk about even the feelings that should be involved in this early departure. But this is again something that it's an exercise for us. Everything is an exercise for us. But to think about what the body means to the spirit. And as you study, as you go deeper into the meaning and the relationship between spirit and body, it's much more challenging for the spirit to incarnate than to discarnate. Because the body is truly, truly a prison for the spirit. Many, many, many of its faculties are hindered, are limited in the physical body. Its ability to reason, to think, to express itself, to feel. So it is, and think about it. I love this comparison because if you know me, I absolutely dislike the cold weather. And why? Because when I am in the winter of Boston, my movements are limited by the amount of layers and the heaviness of the coat, and it's limiting. The more layers you put on, you try to, when you're wearing one of those long coats, try to reach at a cabinet up high here. Here, the clothes don't let you go. Right? And so living in Miami is much better. You flip-flops all day and you move freely. And so this is what the body does. It adds all those heavy-duty layers to the being that we are. So this is an idea that we need to keep working in our minds. Like I said, the more we think, the more we reflect, the more we read and study, we start to become more and more acquainted, and it starts to become less of a foreign concept and more something that we not only know, but we start to feel. Still on the spirit's perspective on loss, the verb to lose within the concept of immortality is displaced. There is no place. Why? Because we only lose what we have. If you don't have, there's nothing to lose, right? And no one belongs to someone else. People will not stop passing on because the law of probability, by the law of probability, everyone's moment will always come. So I love that. You don't lose anyone because you didn't have that person in first place. It didn't belong to you. We are children of God in, again, temporary experiences. And as we'll see, and as I mentioned, once you love, you're never, ever, ever going to lose that person in the sense of the affection that was built. Sometimes we have relationships here that we feel like we love the person, and then life goes on and circumstances changes and you never get to speak to that person again, and you look back in that relationship and there's not much left there. Because there was something at the moment, but the bonds, the real bonds of love, were never built in first place. So the connection disappears because it was never deep enough to be sustained. But we have friends who we have connections. They're so deep and so real that even if you go years without speaking to that person, once you see that person again, it's like time had not passed. And there's no effort in reconnecting to that person. This is what will survive. It survives here when we are incarnated, and will survive once we're outside of the physical body. So this is why we're saying that it's a little challenging for us. The death of a loved one should not cause despair but joy, especially if he or she live a praiseworthy existence. Again, this is not to minimize or invalidate the pain, the natural pain that she herself talked about. But the more we are really in tune with the message of immortality and what it means, think of a graduation. The feelings of a graduation, you ending a cycle, and the joy that you successfully completed that cycle. Go back to the Gospel, chapter 5, when the spirits will tell us about comparing our lives here as two friends who are in prison, and the moment for one to go arrives. How does the other one feel, the one who stays behind? Sad, certainly, because now he needs to complete his sentence on his own, but certainly happy to see the friend living and acquiring his freedom. So the feelings can coexist. And this is what she's saying. So although there is that temporary sadness, natural sadness, but deep inside you think, you know, my father, he's moving on. He's back home. He's preparing to continue his journey, you know, and I am here completing mine, fulfilling my mission. And he will remain alive, not only from the spiritual perspective as a spirit that goes on, but he remains alive in me. Because I am here now to honor his memory and to keep him present by manifesting everything that he left me. His contribution to who I have become. And that's how our loved ones remain with us in our day-to-day, not only in our certainty that they are alive, but they are so much in us, in everything that they leave in us, and that we continue to honor and to manifest. Now, there's another interesting perspective that Spiritism brings to us on loss, when she says that the death of good persons and the continued life of bad ones are often deplored as being an aberration in the sovereign laws, when in fact, always as it should be. Who needs to stay in a hospital? Not the healthy, but the sick. Who needs to be in rehab? Not the able, but the disabled. Who needs to stay here? The ones who haven't finished business. All of us, we're still here, hanging around. Right? But if we're good and we have done what we need to do, I think that often. My grandmother, who was a very important figure in my life, she died at the age of 70. Gosh, so young. How I wish she had stayed for a little longer. But it's that real love, right? So we're gonna look at, is that what you really wish for someone that you love? If he or she is healthy, to stay behind, hospitalized? So then you start kind of changing our ways of thinking. She will continue by saying, because such good men and women are exemplary in their conduct and thought, they finish their commitments in the physical world. They are able to return to their origin, whereas moral debtors, those of wrongful conduct, ought to be allowed more time for rehabilitation and balance. So all of us who still need in this moment to be here, to address our unfinished business, to be exposed to the situations that are best to promote our spiritual health, we're here, we stay behind so we can get our work done. And here she reminds us what I have mentioned, or the perspective of the physical body. Even when blessed with health, the body is a prison, and the liberation of a loved one who returns to plenitude should cause joy and not sorrow. We're getting close to the end. So just I was talking about my grandmother, right? She's gonna remind us the grief that takes hold of those who have been defrauded by the loss of loved ones. Although it translates affection and love, it also harbors a high share of retentive selfishness, which only thinks of itself, not realizing what the rupture of ties represents for the free person, ties that kept him in the cell car in prolonged suffering. So a lot of times, going back to my grandmother's example, I wanted her to stay for myself, right? Who are we thinking about? Ourselves. It would be lovely to have her company for a little longer. But if I think about her, so she passed after having several strokes. So maybe she could have survived with a life with probably severe limitations. Well, she didn't need that. She didn't need that. Actually, once she passed, she fully completed her mission here. And so she, more than many, deserve to achieve the freedom and be outside of this body that in so many ways imprisoned the spirit. So somebody asked me in the previous lectures, wanting for someone to stay is selfishness. Yes, because the focus is yourself, right? And the perspective is still very materialistic, and there is all the attachment behind that feeling. So it doesn't mean that there isn't affection, that there isn't love, like she's saying here, but at the core, it is a very selfish reason and motivation. Now, it's interesting because also she talks about learning related to love. Missing the deceased, grief, and concern about his or her situation in the afterlife are natural phenomena as a result of trials necessary for love, which must be sublimated due to the deceased's physical absence and all its implications. So actually, it makes me think about people who have jobs and travel a lot. It's a challenge for that relationship because they need to learn to love and to be faithful in the presence or in the absence. And so actually, the fact that people go, the fact that the body dies, it presents challenges and gives us important lessons in regards to love, and helps us to, again, sublimate. What is sublimate? Is to purify, is to improve our love, the way we feel our love. So, for example, if you think that that husband really belonged to you, the way that he passed, you have to review that concept, right? So you start to you invited to rethink and to purify and to improve and to deepen and to expand the concept of love. Now, for a lot of folks, it means falling into depression, the emptiness derived by the absence of others, which constituted a reason for joy, security, well-being, and happiness, is transformed into an anguished questioning about the meaning of life when dealing with physical absence and the impression of annihilation. So the materialistic perspective is cruel, because if you truly, truly believe that the body was all there was, then what happens to everything that you experience, to everything that you feel, that goes into nothingness, into oblivion, into emptiness. And yes, you're left with anguish with questionings for which a lot of times there will be no answers unless you dive into a spiritualistic perspective. Stunned before the distressing reflection, anguish turns into depression, and the existential sense disappears, leaving disturbing impressions that painfully alter the course of his social psychological evolution. So you lose that person, you lose the loved one, you can't find the meaning for life anymore, and then you surrender to sadness, which goes from being a natural feeling to being a form of non-acceptance of life, because life makes no sense anymore. And so this is the most powerful thing that Spiritism offers us, is the meaning of life. Because even when you are facing excruciating pain, and the natural pain of the loss of a loved one, you never, ever lose the meaning of life. Loss in love, that does not have the power to end affections. Again, it is in the Gospel according to Spiritism where we're going to find a statement that says that for spirits who love one another, there is no distance, there is no time. Even when they are apart from one another, following their personal journeys, that affection works as a magnet, and they will find each other in the vastness of the universe at any time they want, because that is the power and the strength of love. So for love, when love is there, there is never ever separation, and it never ends. Those loved ones who left live and wait for you. They accompany you in life for now, helping you to acquire the unfading treasures of spiritual virtues. So go to Spirit's book. You're going to look into guardian angels, that in the category of the spirits who actually are close to you are familiar ones. The ones who left ahead of you and now continue to take interest in your life, follow you, come visit you, inspire you, meet you in your dreams. When you have that dream, oh, I dreamt with my grandmother, you likely were with your grandmother, right? And so they continue to invest in our lives just as before. And finalizing, loss and resolution, and it's not an error that the S is capital, it is the solution. The pain of death is softened by gratitude, the hope of reunion, and the certainty of knowing that the dead live on. So I kind of put gratitude there in red because, you know, when dealing with loss, one of the most powerful sentiments and feelings that can actually counterbalance all the sadness is gratitude. Is to, in your prayers, in your feelings, reach out to God, to the universe, and express the deep sense of gratitude for being able to share that experience with that loved one, for the time that you had to share. That is a gift. If a loved one passed away, what a gift it was to be able to have this physical experience, exchange so much, learn so much, grow so much together. So thank you for your attention and have a blessed Sunday.
Thank you.